My dear mother-in-law, we were walking with Jesus down the narrow town streets, with people in the crowd all pushing and pressing to get near him. Suddenly we stopped, and a man rushed forward. It was Jairus, one of the leaders of the synagogue. I know he is highly respected in the community. So my heart sunk. Was he going to ask Jesus an awkward question or order him to leave the town? I'd hardly thought this when there was a gasp from the crowd, for Jairus fell down at Jesus' feet. Jairus pleaded with Jesus to come back to his home for his daughter. A child of 12 was dying. I couldn't hear what Jesus said, but Jairus got up to lead the way, and we all followed. I could hear murmurings and loud comments about Jairus' behaviour from the crowd, echoing my own thoughts. Surely Jairus should be setting an example. How can a man with Jairus' reputation be seen to kneel down the street in front of someone, even if it was Jesus? As we moved along, I thought about it a bit more. Jairus could have sent a servant, yet he came himself to ask Jesus. He was willing to humble himself. He considered his status as something which was not important. It was not beneath his dignity to kneel at Jesus' feet and plead for Jesus to come. As we were walking, Jesus abruptly stopped and called out, "Who touched me?" I gave him the obvious answer about people being so close, everyone is touching him. But Jesus persisted. He asked again, saying something about power having gone out of him. I could see Jairus waiting impatiently. His need was urgent. Surely whoever had touched Jesus could wait until later. We needed to get going. I was going to urge Jesus to move on, when I saw a woman making her way towards Jesus. The crowd parted hurriedly, for, as I later learned, she too was known by them, and they don't want to come into contact with her. She was unclean. The laws of Leviticus are strict, and this woman had been bleeding. I knew that anyone who touched her, or anything she touched, was also unclean. No one wanted to be contaminated by her. She too fell down at Jesus' feet and began to weep. Slowly and haltingly her tale unfolded. The crowd grew quiet as she explained how she had been bleeding for 12 years, how she had been to so many different doctors and had spent all her money on cures which had not worked. She explained that if she touched Jesus' cloak, she knew she had been healed. My initial anger at how she dared to touch Jesus and make him unclean was quenched when I looked at her and then at Jesus. The woman was trembling as though waiting for sentence to be passed. Resigned maybe that Jesus would punish her, even withdraw the cure from her. As Jesus looked at her, I saw the compassion in his eyes. His voice was low but audible as he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Then I felt anger with Jesus. If her faith had cured her, why not let her slip away into the crowd? Why did he single her out, bring her back, embarrass and humiliate her in public? I was determined to confront him later. But it made me think. As well as the social isolation, this woman was barred from normal religious practices, unable to enter the temple or synagogue, or take part in the annual Passover festival and other aspects of worship. And everyone in the community knew it. For 12 years, she would have lived in virtual isolation, being careful that no one came into contact with her or her possessions. Then it hit me. Jesus understood that the woman's condition was known publicly, and therefore for her to be received back into social and religious society, a cure needed to be made public also. And we were about to move off again. I saw someone pushing his way through the crowd. He came to Jairus, and I heard him tell Jairus the news that his daughter had died. Why bother the teacher any more, the messenger told Jairus. I felt so sorry for Jairus. He'd placed his hope in Jesus, and I felt that Jesus had let him down. If only we'd made it there sooner. Jesus too heard, because he turned to Jairus and said, "Don't be afraid, just believe." I thought Jesus didn't understand. The little girl was dead. She was beyond his healing touch. So I thought. Jairus looked Jesus in the eyes, but didn't say anything, just led the way. It was as though Jesus was asking Jairus to trust him. even though the situation seemed hopeless. It was obvious which was Jairus' house, for the mourners had already started their professional lamenting. What a noise! But I know it allows those who are grieving to do so fully, to cry their hearts out without the embarrassment of drawing attention to themselves. Jesus told them to stop and sent them away, saying, "The child is not dead, but asleep." There was a murmur through the crowd. Like them, I agreed that no one was going to tell Jairus that his daughter was dead unless they were really sure. Jesus went into the room the little girl was, asking only me, James, and John, the girl's parents, to follow him. My initial reaction was overtaken by curiosity. After all, I didn't want to miss out on what Jesus would say. Jesus went over to the bed and took the little girl by the hand. "Talitha cum," Jesus said. "Little girl, get up." And she did. She actually got up and began to walk around. Jairus and his wife were in tears as they hugged her, and my eyes were wet too. I felt so privileged that Jesus had chosen me to witness this. Jesus' power was even greater than I understood, for he can even bring the dead back to life. I expected the girl's parents to rush out, tell everyone, maybe hold a party for her. But instead, Jesus ordered them not to tell anyone. I thought this was a bit unfair. Jesus couldn't be expecting people not to find out. After all, the mourners outside would be no longer wanted. But I thought some more. Here again, Jesus showed his care and attention for small details. He was probably thinking of the little girl. She needed her parents just then to look after her. "Give her something to eat," Jesus said. He understood what she needed just then. She didn't need a crowd gawping over, just a few chosen witnesses and the familiar faces of her parents. As I write this, I think about all that has happened today. Two very different people. Jairus, the powerful leader of the synagogue, and the sick woman, whose name I do not know. Although very different, they had something in common. Both had faith in Jesus, and it was through expressing their faith that they were able to experience God's power. Who is this man? A man who has power over the wind and waves, a man who can cast out demons and heal those who are sick, and now a man who can bring the dead back to life. I may not understand it all, but I want to follow him and learn all he has to teach me. And maybe one day my faith will be worthy of his trust in me. Hope to see you soon. Love, Peter.